When you build wealth with Sagicor Investments, you never have to settle for less than your dreams. Call 888-SAGICOR to speak with a wealth advisor so Sagicor Investments can help you create, grow, and preserve your wealth.
And welcome everyone. My name is Giovanni Dennis. I'm a broadcast journalist and I will be your moderator for this evening's panel discussion. A special welcome to those of you joining us here in person and all of you joining us online on Instagram, Facebook, and Zoom. Of course, this is the 5th staging of the Sagicor Money Talks series, and this evening we'll be reviewing the 2024 budget debate. So our theme this evening is Money Talks, the 2024-2025 National Budget Review Investment Opportunities. Now, of course, if you are online, you can follow the discussion by using the hashtags Investor Briefing, Sagicor Investments, and Money Talks. That's hashtag Investor Briefing, hashtag Sagicor Investments, hashtag Money Talks. Now, we have an excellent panel lined up to speak with you, but before I go to our panelists, I invite the CEO of Sagicor Investments, Mrs. Tara Nunez, to do the welcome, and she's standing by.
Mitris Yaga, President of the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica. Emily Shields, Attorney at Law and journalist. Brian Jennings, Partner and CARICOM Tax Leader, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Jamaica. Michael Willacy, Senior Vice President, Corporate, SME, Business Banking, and Strategic Business Development at Sagicor Bank. Jodianne Aries, Assistant Vice President, Research and Strategy at Sagicor Investments. Our friends joining via our social media pages, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to our 5th annual edition of Money Talks. Thank you for joining us. I am pleased to be here this evening as we provide vital insights on the trajectory of our nation by examining what the recently unveiled national budget means for investors. It is important to highlight that the fiscal measures outlined in the presentation carry significance not only for the public and private sectors, but also for everyday Jamaicans seeking financial stability and growth. Additionally, we will explore the direct implications of the budget for the business sector and how institutions, including those within the Sagicor Group, can adapt to the changes. Now, while many of us closely monitor budget debates and understand the intricate connections between fiscal decisions and their lasting effects, we recognize that many investors may wonder how these decisions may impact their investment portfolios. Tonight, our expert panelists will dissect the recent budget presentation and explain the potential risks and gains that are possible during these times. This evening, investors can expect sound advice and strategic recommendations derived from research that should be used in consultation with a wealth advisor to navigate their portfolios. At Sagicor Investments Jamaica, we are steadfast in our commitment to supporting our investors in attaining financial success so that you never have to settle for less than your dreams. Our aim is to equip you with the tools needed to navigate the markets and share key insights to enable you to take advantages of the opportunities to come. It is our pleasure to offer the resources and guidance you need to confidently pursue your financial goals. We invite you to interact with the distinguished panelists, so during the presentation, be sure to make notes and jot down your questions so that you can take full advantage of this platform to gain valuable insights at the appointed time. We trust you will find this event informative and enriching. Please enjoy the proceedings.
All right, thank you so much, Tara. Now, Tara would have mentioned all the persons on panel, And thank you for putting your hands together for that beautiful opening by the CEO of Sagicor Investments, Tara Nunez. Now, she would have mentioned the names of the persons on the panel here, but I'll just introduce them one at a time so you can have them properly acknowledged. Now, standing to my immediate left is Mr. Metrosiaga. He's the president of the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica. Beside him, you have attorney at law, journalist, talk show host, and very importantly, an Arsenal fan, Emily Shields. Yes, it's okay to clap. Beside her, you have Mr. Brian Denning, who is all things tax, an expert in all things tax. He's a partner and CARICOM tax leader at PricewaterhouseCoopers. He's a Liverpool supporter, I'm told. I want to introduce the man beside him just yet. I'll skip him and go to the lady, who is Miss Jodian Aries. She's Assistant Vice President of Research and Strategy, Sagicor Investments, Jamaica. Jodian Aries. And for last, I've saved this person with the longest job title, Corporate, Small, Medium Enterprise, Business Banking and Strategic Business Development at Sagicor Bank, Mr. Michael Willesee. I've not saved it just because his title is so long, but because today is a special day. It's his birthday, so please give him an extra round of applause. Someone so dedicated to his job that he's here even willing to sit and answer questions on all things economy and finance for 90 minutes on his birthday. I want to start with you, Emily, on this very important issue that came out of the budget debate. The proposed increase in the annual general personal income tax threshold from 1.5 million to 1.7 million for all individuals, both employed and self-employed. If accepted now, over 500,000 people will be impacted by this. Your thoughts on this measure, along with the increase in the minimum wage from $13,000 to $15,000 per 40-hour work week?
Thank you, Giovanni. First, let me just say to the team of Sagicor Investments here how crucial this forum is, because ever so often, particularly now with social media, so many people have views. Never mind how uninformed the views are. And matters concerning the economy are so crucial. So when we convene, it's good that we talk in language that our people understand, so they have a proper basis on which to form their opinions. So I appreciate it and applaud it that it's 5 years running. The 26th of February, Giovanni, was a very important day for Jamaica because we had the local government elections. The momentum was gained by the PNP in the local government elections. And I worried coming out of that elections with the budget immediately following that talks of a possible doubling of the income tax threshold is something that could actually happen because it probably is politically expedient. Never mind the detriment it could lead for the country fiscally. So I was quite worried. But I was very happy when I heard in the opening budget presentation where Dr. Nigel Clark laid out for us the cost it would be to Jamaica if we were to move the income tax from 1.5 up to 2.1, up to 2.5, and to doubling. And the approximate cost, he said, would be between 25 and about up to 35, 40 billion or some figures like that. That number, if we'd moved it in a big way, it would mean that we'd be in complete breach of our fiscal rules. We'd be in breach of the Financial Administration and Audit Act, the legislative scheme that we create. And we'd literally be incurring expenditure over and above what our revenue could afford. So it is good to want it politically, but it is bad to have it economically. So where he came out at, which is at 1.7, it makes an awful lot of sense to me. And he demonstrated that approximately between 470,000 people or thereabouts will benefit from this particular arrangement, which will kick in April, which is just right around the corner. So I think we have seen a lot of political maturity because we remember from where we've come. We remember as well just how high our debt to GDP burden was when we had to re-engage the IMF and the banning of belly and all of those things. And it is very important that all of us know we cannot go back there. He's also announced, as you've asked, Giovanni, the increase in the minimum wage from 13 to 15,000 come the 1st of June. That particular increase, the people who get that amount will still not fall in the band to pay income tax. So they will have a little bit more to spend, because I believe at the current 1.5 income tax threshold, you have to be earning about 28,000 weekly, approximately 29,000 to be caught by the income tax net. So even with the increase, people still won't be asked to pay any income tax in that band. But it is true that with the war in Ukraine, it is true that post-COVID, the inflationary pressures have been great. But I think those very large increases over and above what we have seen in income tax, in minimum wage, that will help people to have a little bit more with which to go to the supermarket, even if and when it can't buy as much in 2024 as it used to buy in 2023 and before. So I think on the whole, I'm certainly satisfied because I was brought into the minister's thoughts as to how and why he stopped this time at 1.7 with the assurance that when we can do more, then we will.
So I just want to invite as well 2 other comments and thoughts on this first question from our other panelists here. Just Mr. Denning first and then Mr. Seaga, your thoughts on the threshold and the increase in minimum wage.
Thank you, Giovanni. First of all, I would endorse what Mrs. Shields has said in terms of the importance of moving away from the using, for example, budget measures and revenue measures for political expediency and promising lots of things and then having to deal with the economic challenges of implementing it. I think Minister Clark did articulate very clearly the cost of the various policy options, and I think we also have to be thankful for the fiscal framework that is now in place, legislative framework, and the work to date of the economic, the EPOC committee, the oversight committee, Economic Program Oversight Committee. That committee is a creation of what we've gone through in Jamaica in the last number of years, and I think that oversight and staying within with having a legislative framework also protects Jamaica from future promises that can't really be kept. And we've seen that in the past where promises have been made and obviously not being kept. And it's important to keep ourselves in tight control fiscally. If you look at our debt to GDP, it's projected to go down to 72% by the end of the year. It's not long ago that it was 147% of GDP. I mean, that alone is transformative, and I think successive administrations, particularly since that time in 2013, it's, you know, each administration initially having to work within a very tight program dealing with the IMF, but subsequently continuing it. It's very, very important. We're no longer under an IMF program, but we've maintained the kind of discipline that's needed. So I think it's important to recognize that, and to congratulate the minister and his team for that, because it's not easy. I've been involved in tax reform for many, many years, and I know the amount of pressures that the Ministry of Finance come under from asks from all different sectors to want special arrangements and special concessions and so on. So I think it's important to recognize where we're coming from.
And for you, Mr. Siaga?
Wholeheartedly agree with both panelists. For those of us that are old enough and have as much gray hair as I do, and I don't see very many in the room, we will know what it is like to live in an environment where our debt to GDP is at 147 to 1, and where interest rates are at 90%, and when there are other restrictions on businesses that we don't have today, we don't even think about today. I thought it was a responsible budget, Giovanni. I thought the minister gave it a great deal of thought and really was gentle with us, because the easy thing to have done would have been to really open the floodgates and do what needed to be done politically. And I think we have matured as a country. And the minister gave great thought to what he did, and I thought gave us what we could get. Listen, all of the economic indicators are pointing in the right direction. The cry is that those things are not reaching down into the level of society that people want it to reach to. When asked about that, the minister says that it takes time. There is an effect, there's a lag effect that we need to wait. We need to give time for the programs to be able to be developed. I think what we saw in this budget was the minister's prudent and responsible way of handling the economy is now coming to bear, where the programs are able to be rolled out, and we're seeing that now. So in terms of the 1.7, I'm glad he didn't go further than that, simply because we couldn't afford it as a nation. In terms of the minimum wage, I think that it did come as a surprise to me that the increase was to 13,000.
15.
It was 13 just the other day, which was a 45% increase, and now it's 15% more, up to 15,000. That can be and can have an effect on inflation. That is going to be difficult, and businesses are going to have to identify who they keep on for that 15,000. The issue here, folks, is not about whether or not 15,000 is a livable wage, or whether it should be 15 or 20 or 30. The question is, are we being productive? Productivity is the key, because you cannot have somebody working for you that is not earning at least what you are paying them, or you are going to go bankrupt.
You kind of spoke and led perfectly there into the segue. 4.2%, the lowest unemployment levels in Jamaica's history, is something that the minister speaks proudly of. How does this affect the country? You spoke about things trickling down to the rest of the society, to the small man essentially. But given the current inflationary environment, how does the unemployment levels affect the general population?
You know, a lot of people say, oh, 4.2% is not true, and lots of people are not employed. Listen, we haven't changed the way we measure unemployment or employment. So the numbers are real. It is 4.2% against what it used to be, which was 10, 15, 20%. So those numbers are real, and people are working. More people are working than used to be working. The issue is now, how do we get enough people to work in our factories and in our shops and in our stores and in our banks? And the answer is, in my humble opinion, is that we're going to have to increase the training programs that we have. Heart has got to do a better job. The institutions, the other institutions out there have to do better jobs. The private institutions have to do better jobs. And then we may have to look at importation of labor. I think we are probably the only country in the world that does not import labor that is needed. We have to bring that labor here, and we have to allow them to transfer the knowledge and teach us how to do the work. But it can't be off the table anymore.
Now, with the lowering of the unemployment numbers, the increase in the improvement in our fiscal management, the credit ratings, the global credit ratings agencies are, saying good things, singing praises for Jamaica. I'll just quickly read three. Standard & Poor's S&P Global Ratings in September last year upgraded Jamaica's long-term foreign and local currency issuer default rating from B+ to BB- with a stable outlook. Moody's Investor Service in October last year improved Jamaica's long-term issuer and senior unsecured ratings from B2 to B1 and revised the outlook from stable to positive. And in March this year, Fitch Ratings upgraded Jamaica's long-term foreign currency and local currency issuer default ratings from BB- to BB- from B+ with a positive outlook. Jody and Aries, coming to you now. What does this mean for the nation, investments, and does this translate to the common man for our daily lives?
Okay, I'll start with the last part first, seeing that it was already mentioned in terms of how it manifests to the common man. The fact is that based on what they're saying, it's not going to be an immediate or direct benefit right away to you as an individual. So it's not like an increase in the threshold where you'll see right away once that takes effect an increase, a tangible increase in what it is that you get as a net income. So it takes a little while in order to feel that sort of an impact as you and as an individual. And we have to remember that what credit rating agencies are looking at is really an outlook. So when it is that they're improving your rating, they're saying, we're seeing you're doing well, and we expect you to continue on this trajectory. And because it's outlook, it means that it's benefit that is likely to come to us over time. One of the things that the minister would have mentioned is that with an improved credit rating, you can now go out there and get more favorable financing terms, which means that there's less that you would be able, that you'll have to spend on caring for your debt. So you can now get rates that are a little bit more competitive. So it leaves no room for the government to put in place infrastructure, healthcare, education, and that now is when we start to see more of the benefit to us as you said, the common man. But it takes a little time. It augurs well for investments though, because when it is that you have this sort of stability and there's positive outlook, this is something that businesses want. So you think about you're putting in place infrastructure, you're putting in place education, healthcare. What happens then is that it creates an environment that enables growth. And in an environment that enables growth, businesses do well. So as an investor, if it is that you are putting money to support a business, you're an angel investor, you're doing on the stock market, you're going into debt, then this is going to be positive for you. And already we'd have seen, so if it is that you follow the Jamaica Stock Exchange, you'll notice that listed companies have already indicated that they are seeing an increase in their ratings just on the basis that they're in a country that has seen an improvement in ratings. And that augurs well for investments.
Which leads me nicely to Mr. Willesee. In your capacity as Senior Vice President for Corporate Banking and Small Medium Enterprise Business Banking, give us the key takeaways that MSMEs can take from the budget. The budget was closed just this evening by the Finance Minister. But how can MSMEs, what are the key takeaways for them in terms of how they can navigate the upcoming financial year?
Well, let me start by saying I'm quite impressed by the budget. And it was well thought through. For MSMEs, they need a stable economy. The macroeconomic indicators are positive, which brings a lot of opportunities. The thing that I saw most of all is the level of spending on infrastructure, over $500 billion over the next 5 years. That is going to create a lot of activities, significant activities that small businesses can create linkages at some sort of what I call value-added type of businesses that will help to support that. If I were to speak to MSMEs, though, in terms of what are some of the things that were not necessarily well highlighted but are important to them is the Data Protection Act. I see where it has been extended to June, and it has implication in terms of small businesses, how they manage and store information for their clients. And I see where the minister, they have actually extended it to June of this year for the implementation, trying to give small businesses time to implement it. So they need to pay attention to that. The other thing that, that jumped out at me was the amnesty from the NHT. A number of small businesses were not able to pay a lot of their contributions because of the effect of COVID and cash flows issues. What I see is that the NHT is willing to grant them discounts and give them time to pay. I think if they pay between, say, September, what happens is that the NHT is willing to sort of remove penalty from the outstanding employee contribution and employee contribution, plus give them a discount of almost 20%. And if they're able to pay between October to December, they'll also get a relief from any penalties. And if they go all over into January to March of 2025, they'll also get a relief of any penalty on employers' contribution as well. The other one that jumped out at me as well is the opportunity now that has been introduced in the junior stock market, where the equity capitalization is now up to 750, moving from 500. That gives small business opportunities to now list on the junior stock exchange with much more than what it was before. That can help them in their growth, particularly that we're entering into an economy that is expected to grow. That is more money to them. The only question I have, and certainly the minister is not here, he'll probably answer it at another time, is why the existing set of persons on the companies on the junior stock exchange was not afforded that opportunity as well. But those are the things that jumped out for me that I'm asking small businesses to pay attention to.
And it's important, as you mentioned, small businesses. Another issue, and I'm coming to Brian Denning with this, for the 7th consecutive year, no new taxes, but we also know taxes assist with the development of a country, and we want you to shed some light on the need for taxes and national development.
Sure. Well, I've been involved in the topic of tax reform in Jamaica for many years, and one of the things that I've consistently said, that the path of national development must be paved with tax receipts. And the reason I said that is that development requires investment, and investment, as we know, requires money. If we don't generate taxes, then the question then is, how is the development going to be paid for? We cannot go back to borrowing money annually that we just cannot afford. And we cannot go back to the many, many years of imposing taxes every year in order to pick up whether it's fiscal deficits and so on. We need to deburden the economy from excessive taxation, and we have been doing that. And that's one of the reasons why we haven't had the last 7 years with any new taxes, and in fact 9 years on a net basis with no new taxes. If you contrast that with the years, many, many years previous to that, I think it's 20-something years, there were taxes new taxes every single year in Jamaica. And in some cases, there were 2 budgets with 2 rounds of taxes. It was that bad. There's a quote I like from that explains it. Winston Churchill is quoted as saying that trying to tax your way into prosperity is like a man standing into a bucket and then trying to lift himself up by the handle. And it really does illustrate that you're really hampering yourself by consistently imposing new taxes. So we have achieved a lot. And this budget, having yet another year with no new taxes, is something to be very proud of as a country, and shows that we're continuing to go in the right direction. And the question then is, if we're not going to impose new taxes, where are the taxes going to come from? you know, and that can be answered in, there's essentially economic growth and greater tax compliance. They're the two key areas that we need to tap into. And so when you think of it, we would not have been able to, 10 years ago, we would not have been able to come through the COVID pandemic the way we've come through it in the last, in the last 2 years, in terms of, because of our financial stability and the macroeconomic stability. We would not have been able to come through it in the same way. The foreign exchange rate would have been completely different to where it is today. And our debt to GDP ratio has dropped. It's gone down, as I mentioned earlier, it's going to estimated 72%, and continuing to go down, you know, at a good pace. So the budget, I would say, was a modest enough give back budget, but it's important because it sets the right tone. And I think, you know, as we continue kind of to chart the correct fiscal course, I think, you know, what Metria said earlier is important, that where we need to go now is we need to make sure that everybody benefits from this. And as we continue to shore up the fiscal situation, ensure continued stability, that everybody in the Jamaican society benefits, and that we can reach out and bring up everybody so that, you know, the tide lifts all boats and not just a select few. So I think that's important, but we must not, we cannot, we're not out of the woods financially, and it's important that we don't go back to new annual taxes, fiscal deficits, or regular FX devaluation.
Coming to Emily Shields, who has a comment on this, but I just wanted to add to what you said. I remember the Prime Minister said something during his presentation last Thursday that I never really thought about in that way. He said, you know, speaking of the 27 years that you mentioned of additional taxes each year, people used to dread the budget debate, and now we have a situation where people are looking forward to the budget debate, thinking, you know, what goodies they'll be getting. I have a question for you, Emily, but you wanted to comment to follow up.
I want to come in on a couple of things, because Metro Seaga has said we probably need to import labor. And for a long time, that was the idea. Then I heard the Prime Minister's presentation, which has said they're now going to be giving people who enroll to HEART, which they now don't have to pay for. You're getting a stipend for traveling, and you're getting a stipend for lunch. And a lot of the people out there have skills, they don't have the certification. I think that's going to be a monumental shift, because one of the hardest people to find now is actually a skilled worker. If you have a good electrician, when he gives you a bill for 100,000, you're getting away with murder. Don't lose him. If you have a good plumber, it's the same thing. It's the hardest thing to find. So I think once we begin to invest in our people, as these ideas will do, then the need to import the labor, or the desire to, it might really dissipate, certainly now than in years gone by. And then the other thing that Mr. Denning said, which is crucial, no new taxes. I never thought, just like you, Giovanni, I'd live to see the day when it's really no new taxes, but government revenue increasing year on year. Why is government revenue increasing year on year with no new taxes? Because people know, with the debt being paid down, and we must continue to encourage the government to pay down the debt. When you pay down the debt and your GDP is expanding, your debt to GDP ratio will go down, as Mr. Denning said. So for the first time in about 40 years, we're up on 72% debt to GDP ratio. What does this mean?
We're up on a short break, Emily, but I just wanted to give Mr. Seaga a chance to respond to what you were saying.
So, Emily, with due respect to the Prime Minister, what he's talking about is going to take some time. And I agree with it, you know, it's the right thing to do. But in the meantime, businesses are suffering, and suffering in a real way, and we need to get that labor in here. Not to stay, but to come in, transfer knowledge, and go away.
All right, so the discussion is indeed very interesting, very insightful so far. We are going to take a short break. We just want to, in the meantime, invite persons on social media, whether they're on Zoom, Instagram, or Facebook, to send us your questions. If you have questions for any one of our expert panelists, please do share that question with us. And remember to use our hashtags Investor Briefing, Money Talks, and hashtag Sagicor Investments. We'll be right back in just a minute.
It's a buyer's market. That means there's potential to make money when the markets rise. That's why I'm investing in Sagicor Investments Sigma Global Funds now. Call me smart.
Let us help you find your ideal mix of investments today with Sigma Global Funds.
I have a mix of wise investments, so I keep earning no matter the season. I have a diversified portfolio with Sagicor Investments Sigma Global Funds. Call me savvy.
Let us help you find your ideal mix of investments today with Sigma Global Funds.
All right, so thank you so much for staying with us and continuing to stay tuned to the fifth staging of the Money Talk series. In today's discussion, Sagicor Investments explores the topic Money Talks, the 2024-2025 National Budget Review, investment opportunities. Now, we are now at the exciting part of the program where you get to hear responses to the questions which you have directed to the panelists today. Now, we do have some questions to persons from social media. And the first one is from Kevin Mills. He's asking, why is the smaller investors, or it should be, why are smaller investors not getting more returns on our investments? Jodian, you look like you can take this one.
Sure. So I wouldn't say that smaller investors aren't necessarily getting more on their investments. I mean, the return is the same. It's just that the principal is smaller, so it may seem quantitatively a lower number. But you are still open to the same opportunities as it is for persons who are considered larger investors. It could also mean that, you probably need to do a little bit more realignment of your portfolio. And so I'd recommend that you speak with one of our Sagicor Investments wealth advisors who can probably assist you a little bit more with that.
All right. And just want to say as well, if you are here in the audience and you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand. I'll acknowledge you and a member from the team will come to you and allow you to ask your question. Taking another question from Raymond Chin. He's asking, what is the best stocks, or this should be, what are the best stocks to buy now? He wants to know how he can benefit right away.
Well, I think Raymond is running ahead. There is a stock pick section, so we'll talk about that a little bit more. But I think you'd want to stick to areas where there is going to be potential for growth. And so it is a good time when we look at probably our local stock market in terms of the price to earning multiples at which some of these companies are trading at. And we have seen a downward revision. So it's really a good time to take some step into the market to increase your holdings in some of these companies. But we'll touch much more on that. So I think we have about 6 companies that we'll talk about a little bit later.
All right, final one I'll take from social media for now, and this goes to you, Mr. Siaga. This is from Zygmunt Williams, and Zygmunt is asking, how will the budget affect the farming and transport sector?
That's a great question, and the truth is we don't know yet. There needs to be some work done around the announcement that there's going to be removal of GCT on imported raw foods. How the details of that we have not seen yet. We have asked, and we're setting up at the PSOJ, we're setting up a team that includes all of the persons that are in the business and are going to be analyzing what has been said, meeting with the minister to try to figure out exactly what the details are. And as soon as we know, we will announce it to the public. And we will try to put in place whatever measures we can to alleviate some of the issues, if it creates any.
All right, thank you so much for that. So I want to thank everyone on social media for their questions. We haven't had any yet from anyone in the audience here. There's still time to go. If you want to ask a question, feel free to raise a hand. We do want to make this discussion very engaging as much as possible. I see a gentleman here in white raising his hand. Just introduce yourself and go ahead.
Good evening. Yeah, my name is Philip Earl, and based off the discussions, I have two questions that have been circulating in my mind for some time since the budget. We have got the good news that the government is investing in skills training programs with entities such as HEART. What guarantee do we have that these investments will remain in the island for further development of the country? In addition to that, as it relates to importing labor, Jamaica has a lot of brilliant minds here. How do we know that that will be beneficial to our market and expats will not just come in, reap the benefits, and leave us as they have done in the past? Those are my two questions to any member.
Final question first to you, Mr. Siaga, the last question.
You know, it's very easy to say that we have brilliant minds here, and we do. We have brilliant minds. The truth is a lot of the brilliant minds are leaving. 80% of the people that leave university are going away to live. That's a statistic that I heard the other day that really blew my mind. So our brilliant minds, we're being taught to here, and we're going away, and we're making other economies rich. So we spoke about the fact that we have unemployment is 4.2%. That is, for all intents and purposes, full employment in our society. In a business, I can tell you, it's very difficult to get a plant manager, an engineer, a plumber, an electrician. It's just very difficult to find committed people who want to work, no matter what the salary is at this point. So, and listen, salaries have gone up and are continuing to go up. The key is that we need to write our laws to allow people to be able to come in, to be able to transfer the knowledge, because that's the only way they're going to be able to come in, and then let them go back out. We need to take advantage of these situations rather than have them work against us. So I feel very strongly about it. My membership feels very strongly about it, that we cannot continue to operate businesses where we have people coming to work 3 days a week, where we have people who are positions that we simply can't fill.
Emily Shields, if I'm just paraphrasing your first question, how do you know that all the investment that the government will be making in the HEART trainees, that they won't just get the qualifications and just leave and go work overseas? That's the gist of your question, right?
Yeah, well, I think it's okay for some to leave. We've always had more people living out of Jamaica than actually living here. The population of the diaspora is way over 3 million. One of our chief foreign exchange earner is remittances. And that counts for a lot. Two, I don't know if we realize how beautiful this country is and how great it is to live here. One of the main reasons people leave is because we have not been paying them a livable wage. So, yeah, when you look historically at the per capita income of Barbados, Trinidad, perhaps Guyana, and put Jamaica next to it from 1962, they, in terms of per capita income, became the Usain Bolts because they've been running along. Barbados now has per capita income at about $20,000 US. Jamaica has been in reverse. We are now, with the new wage restructuring exercise that the government undertook, which is massive, we are just now at $7,000 US based on the 2023 figures, I believe. So once we start paying people more, everybody's gonna be moved up. So when I lived in the country, in Westmoreland, what used to happen, somebody would get on the farm work program, you go overseas, you take your time, you send the money back, you build one part of the house this year, next year you build another part of the house, and so forth. Very soon, when people become more skilled, they start getting more money, they'd be able to do that, and they won't feel the compulsion to leave. So don't stop anybody. The world is our oyster. We all can't be in this beautiful country, and in time it's going to level up.
All right, I do hope that answers your question. We have another question. This lady looks like Sylvia Cohenberg from the University of the West Indies Humanities. I remember you, I did philosophy.
Thank you. Right. So, hi, Emily. My question is, we may not be able to tax our way to wealth, but we may be able to tax our way to wellness. And I'm saying this because there is still huge inequity in access to good health care, good education. Don't even ask about what people are supposed to do when they get too old to work. And as Emily points out, if our graduates are not paid enough, then they know that they and their children are still going to be subject to access to poor health care and poor education because they cannot afford better for themselves or their children. And that might be also a very good reason to actually leave these shores, because that provides then opportunities not just for themselves but also for the next generation. And as a result, Jamaica's population is becoming quite imbalanced. It's a good, well-kept secret that the number of children, the proportion of children in the population is going down rapidly. Thank you.
Is there a question in there? Or was this a comment more so? A comment. Tax ourselves to wellness?
Giovanni, I'd like to say something on
yes.
the issues that have been raised regarding employment and retaining talent here. Emily spoke about the debt to GDP and per capita income for Jamaica being 7,000. Barbados, Trinidad is roughly 20,000. And I looked at the debt to GDP that is improving. However, our productivity is low. And I asked a question, not asked a question, but my observation also is the type of businesses and employment opportunities that are here. Take, for instance, this country needs to start looking at projects, companies that can bring greater value added to this country in order to attract some of our young minds that have gone. And I'm going to bring into an example of the German ship repair that was just opened recently, funded by Sagicor Group. When you look at the transformation and the type of skill that is required, and what is happening is that management is taking those skill sets and going to train it from the Marine Institute or Maritime Institute. So what I'm saying is that there's great potential, but the thing is that we've got to plan. When you look at the University of the West Indies, I'm sure the management faculty is the one that has taken in the most students. The question is, do we need so many managers? How are we planning? So we got to look at, it must be what I call a comprehensive approach in how we solve some of our economic issues.
All right. Mr. Denning.
I would just like to comment briefly. What I would like to point out is that the taxation system of any country, and particularly in this case Jamaica, the design of it is so important because a well-designed, well-functioning tax system can actually be an asset, really a real asset to the country. Nobody likes to pay more taxes than they have to, but well-designed taxes also encourage people to pursue the behaviors that you want them to pursue, and also to discourage the behaviors that you don't want them to pursue. And so therefore, when it comes to some of these policies that we speak of, that you mentioned, are the concerns around education, health care, wellness, the environment, which I think is another area that's critically important to address. Taxation can actually play, with well-targeted policies, can actually encourage changes in behavior in a number of these areas. So I think it is important when we're looking at policy to include, ask the question, how can our tax policy play a part in changing behaviors? And it can be a very powerful agent for change.
Moving on to another question from Ann Lee on Facebook, and I'm going to direct this one to you, Mr. Siaga. A lot of the questions here seem to be coming to you. The issue of labor has struck a chord for many people. What I can say, and that I've heard you hint at, is the shortage of labor, especially in the construction industry, where there's a lot of concerns, and from where I sit in broadcast media, I have heard and done stories about concerns from many developers that they can't get people to work on constructions as local Jamaicans. That is because people don't want to work for the salaries that are being offered, and quite frankly, there are other illicit methods, especially out in Western Jamaica that's, very, widespread. And Anli is asking, re the shortage of labor, how do we leverage labor availability in rural areas? Persons in rural areas are in desperate need of work. How do we bring work to them or bring them to the work?
I think through these programs that the Prime Minister announced, like for example, HART, allowing or giving people money to transportation to come into HART and to give them a stipend, things of that nature are going to get people into the programs. But regardless, listen, it is very difficult for a job mixing cement to compete with a job scamming. One earns $25,000 a week and one earns $250,000 a week. What we have to do is put the things in place to make sure that people can't do the illicit things. We have to put the penalties in place. However, the labor issue is a real issue. There are persons in rural communities that have an issue coming into town to work, because when I scoured the entire Jamaica looking for employees, but when I do find them, it's a matter of where do you house them, where do they live, how do they get transportation to and from where they live. So the investment in the country cannot be Kingston-centric or Montego Bay-centric. It has to be island-wide. And I want to just use this opportunity to elaborate on something that Michael said a little earlier. We have got to build our economy around a logistics-centered economy. We have to build our economy based on our location. You see, folks, we are located in the Americas, where Singapore is located in Asia. And we have never used our location for anything other than to bring tourists here from the east coast of North America or from Canada. We need to start realizing that where we are located in the Americas is a gold mine for us. Our location, the fact that we speak English, the fact that we have an amazing port, the fact that we have a good fiscal and monetary policy in place makes us a gem. And we have to start getting these international companies to come here and start real big move-the-needle manufacturing that pays the taxes, that increases our taxes without any new taxes. So I feel very strongly about the fact that that's how we're going to grow our economy. Our economy is simply too small. We have to get our economy bigger. That's how we're going to get our GDP per capita bigger than it is. So to the gentleman online, we're trying to get people from the rural areas in. I don't have all the answers, but if you can suggest, I'd be happy to hear.
I think she's a lady, Ann Lee. Finally, Mr. Denning, before we move on.
Yeah, just in relation to the conversation that we've just had, I'd just like to add 2 points. First of all, in relation to skills training and HART and the initiatives that were announced, I would also just say that I think, and based on my personal experience in dealing with the construction sector and getting work done, I think it's very, very important that we also teach money management and financial skills to our young people. What I find is, I think all of us who have engaged tradesmen to do work for us, and sometimes, been charged very sizable amounts. And as you pay it on Friday, and by Monday when they're coming back to continue, the money is gone. And I think it's a critical part when you reason with them. It's hard to understand where that money went and how it couldn't have been better managed. And I think it's a key part to try to uplift our young people. Financial management, money management is very important. So I think I just wanted to add that point first of all. The second point, in terms of growth of the economy, while large-scale investments and coming into the country and attracting, companies in and so on is important, and we should continue to do so, I believe that the true engine for growth in this country is the small and medium enterprises. And if you're a young person sitting in rural Jamaica wondering where your options are right now and so on, it's very difficult to tap into and resonate with some large-scale, big investment coming into the ports or some logistics center and so on, BPO, whatever. I believe that agriculture and agri-processing and taking us much further down the value-added chain is a critical part of the growth of Jamaica, and I think it's accessible to so many people, or it can be accessible to so many people in their own home communities. What you don't want is to be pulling people out of having to come out of their home communities into certain locations in the country to get work. You want to be able to live and work in their own communities. And I think those, agro-processing, value-added is so critical. I don't think we've implemented all of the right solutions. I think there are some things that still can be done. We have to tackle issues of predial larceny, because as a result of that, people are reluctant to invest in agricultural technologies that could really ramp up the productivity and yield from the sector. So I think with the right policy prescriptions and implementation, we can actually achieve a lot.
That's something that we do want to follow up on, but I'm being told that there's another question from someone in the audience. Yes?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Shadeen Ramsey. I'm a business consultant and a current law student. And as a business consultant at Ramsey's Professional Services, I would have come in contact with a lot of small and medium-sized enterprises. And I want to say that you are right, very right, in my opinion, that small and medium-sized enterprises is going to basically provide a lot of solutions in terms of employment and in terms of improving our GDP. I would also like to say that based on my analysis and research, I would have seen that Jamaica has a huge informal sector still, which means that a lot is not being counted, which means that we're doing more than we have on paper. The next thing that's my concern with that is, even though we have things like the Do Business campaign and so on, we're not talking about the taxation that's being levied on entrepreneurs mostly. Like, we are directly being impacted, for example, with the Trust and Corporate Services taxes $350,000 to $500,000 to get that license, and that's for attorneys and business consultants that do COJ work. We're not talking about things like so many red tapes to get all of these licenses. So we cannot be promoting, doing business, being compliant when there's so many red tapes, some of which I know has to do with because we're in so much debt with the IMF and external bodies having says in our economy. But what I want to know is, since we understand that, okay, small businesses are really driving this economy, we're imposing so many taxation on them, what is the government doing in terms of with this budget? Because I didn't hear much other than an increase in the procurement, basically signing off on the procurement amount to pay people. I want to know, what is the government putting in place to help to offset some of these costs to small business people who are just starting out? We can offer jobs, we can do a lot of things, but when there's so many red tapes, we're not going to register. When there's so many red tapes, we're not going to want to pay taxes and all of these things. It's just too much, and we're not seeing the benefits back.
All right, Ms. Ramsey. So very important question in terms of what the government is doing. I'm looking across my expert panel right here, and I'm not seeing anyone working with the government at the moment. It would be unfair for me to ask any of them here to answer, but it's a very important question, and we do take the question. I'm not sure if anyone really wants to take that, because that's government, that's policy. It really would be unfair to ask any of them specifically to answer the direct question that you asked. What I can say is that thanks to everyone on social media here in the audience for all your questions so far. We are going to take one more. I feel it very hard to ignore. I know I'm being pressed to move on to some of the other important. I have so many questions to ask that I really do want to put to our experts. I do want to engage our audience. Just introduce yourself and ask a question, please.
I'm Radcliffe Nibbs. I've been in business for more than half my life. Absolutely. But I wanted to just go back to what Michaels and Mitri spoke to regarding logistics and creating the sort of employment that Jamaica needs. But there's an important question that needs to be answered. Are we bold enough to create policy, to advocate policy, which will see, because as it stands right now, government subsidizes the universities. But is it reasonable to provide a similar subsidy to somebody with no due respect, no disrespect intended, doing library studies, as opposed to somebody doing math or engineering or in the STEM area? And will we be bold enough to incentivize the teaching of these subjects by incentivizing the teachers? Are we going to be bold enough to create the environment that can move us forward in this direction?
Sounds again like very much.
I think we have to be. I think your point, rather than a question, it's a statement, and I agree with you 100%. I think the government does have to be bold enough to take the step and look outside of the norms, the traditional ways that we have taught people and have subsidized teaching people. Yeah, I agree with you.
All right, so thanks for all your questions, social media and here in person. If you have a question that did not get answered or you want to ask more questions, you may call 888 Sagicor to speak with a capital markets manager. No, we answered your questions, well, most of them. Now it's time to test your knowledge and, well, to win one of 3 giveaways. Question 1, and this is for people who are on Zoom. What is the tagline for Sagicor Investments brand campaign? Again, just to repeat that question, what is the tagline for Sagicor Investments brand campaign? Question 2, and this is if you are joining on Instagram. Name the 2 countries in which Sagicor Investments operate. Name the 2 countries in which Sagicor Investments operates. I see people here jumping on their phone, and if you're here in person, you are here in person. And if you're joining on Facebook, answer this question. Name 3 things needed to open a stock brokerage account with Sagicor Investments. Just 3 things needed to open a stock brokerage account with Sagicor Investments. And finally, if you're here with us in person, just raise your hand to indicate if you want to answer this question, and the representative will come to you. Your question, for those of you in the audience, first person to raise their hands. I played a quiz match last night. I don't know. We have a buzzer? No buzzer? Okay. Here's the question. Name 2 Sagicor Investments products. Man in black. Not Will Smith, though. Right here.
Sigma Equity. I'm Principal Protected Fund.
Quantessa, is he right or is he maybe a little bit, probably? We will know by the end of our program, and I'm waiting on an indication from one of my team. Okay, so we'll let you know if you get that answer right. The judges are deliberating. I see more hands being raised. Do we have more questions right now? Okay, moving on right now to our panel, and I have so many questions to ask, guys, and you guys have been doing so good so far. Widely anticipated increase, Emily, coming back to you, in the de minimis value of imported goods and an increase in the passenger duty-free threshold, an increase in the duty-free inbound passenger allowance from US 500, to US $1,000 also being proposed here. Do we foresee any challenges, and is this the right step towards the promised review of the Customs Act?
No, I don't foresee any challenge. I think it was a little bit of a lot of effort putting into getting a little bit of money. Because I think, from $50 to $100 for the de minimis, so that's the minimum sum that you can bring something in without duty. And then from 500 to 1,000, you have people at customs pouring through your bag to find out if you're over 501. Spending 5 minutes to charge you 5 cents didn't make much sense. But the government is losing about $781 million from that little. But it will just make travel, I think, a little bit easier for all of us, and we can genuinely declare what we bring in now. So don't say it's personal effects when there's a little bit more in it. So it's a good move. We cannot be afraid of the market. A lot of us look for things on Amazon. A lot of our people are selling things on Amazon. The world is our marketplace. We want to buy from many vendors. We want many customers to buy from us. And I think this is going to just allow free market to drive whatever is going on. So good move. It took too long to come.
We are up on another quick break, but stay with us. We'll be right back after these few messages.
Furnish Aggregate Limited, which is a quarry plant. It was a dream of the owner, and Sagicor assisted him in funding it and making his dream into reality. A major vision of Sagicor Bank is to assist with the development of the Jamaican economy. And this particular project, venture, is one that fits perfectly into that vision.
What we produce is washed sand and different sizes of gravel to the local and regional construction markets, which benefits the local community of St. Thomas and national development through exporting, as well as environmental sustainability. Our competitive advantage is the technology, and it allows us to be efficient and produce a better quality product.
Aggregate is something that is well sought after now and bring in additional business. So it is helping the parish grow as well.
Welcome back to our discussion here, the Sagicor Money Talks, the 2024-2025 budget review, investment opportunities. If you are joining us online, remember you can follow the discussion using our hashtags, hashtag Money Talks, hashtag Sagicor Investments, and hashtag Investor Briefing. Now, this question for Metri Siaga. In his 2021-2022 budget presentation, Minister Clark, that's Dr. Nigel Clark, Minister of Finance, had announced a reduction of asset tax on financial institutions. However, this was subsequently deferred due to COVID. In this year's presentation, no update was given. Is this something the private sector would still like to see?
Absolutely. It's something that we have spoken to the minister about. And, you know, he has said, listen, don't really have the fiscal space at this point, but we are looking at it. The promise was made to remove it. I accept that we had COVID. I accept that we have come through the other end now, and the fiscal space is there. And I think the minister needs to hold true to his word and do what he said he would do.
For you, Julian, the budget spoke to macroeconomic stability and highlighted, macroeconomic fundamentals that are the strongest in over 50 years. What does this spell for the country and investments?
Okay, so stability means that there is some level of predictability in what is happening, and it's less volatility in terms of economic indicators. And it may sound a little bit boring, but it actually appeals to businesses, because as a business, you want to know that you're working in an economy that has some amount of stability. There isn't this great fluctuations that happen to the indicators that could affect your business. So what it really means for us is that once you're at a place of stability, it is now creating that sort of environment for you to propel towards having stronger economic activity. And so for businesses, it becomes something that is attractive once it is that you have stability. And if it is that businesses are coming in and businesses are allowed to expand in a space that is stable and looking towards growth, then that augurs well for investments. It augurs well for us as persons who are looking to support businesses, to whether through equity or through debt. So it really speaks to having less volatility in our indicators and setting a platform for continued or stronger growth to come.
There's a question regarding pensioners. The proposed policies for pensioners formed part of the budget debate this year. It was proposed that the annual pension exemption and the age relief exemption be increased. Now, that's from 80,000 to 250,000 for pensioners over 55 years old and over 65 years old. Now, the proposal indicates that tax relief for the elderly as well as pensioners on fixed incomes as well as solar panel home grants to include installation of solar panel systems on the houses of public sector pensioners at a minimum of 1.5 million. Could you shed some light on this and whether there are investment opportunities there now that life expectancy has increased to over 70 years?
Sure. So just to recap, so it is actually two exemptions. So one is the pension exemption and the other one is the age relief exemption. So for persons over 65, there's a little bit more exemptions that's available to you based on the fact that it's additive, that you'd now benefit from both. And I think working at a financial institution where it is that we say wise financial thinking for life, once it is that persons are coming into more disposable income, it is my duty to recommend to them that they don't only consume in the now, but that they do a set aside for future. So once it is that you're seeing some amount of increase in your income, you will want to recommend to you that there are investment opportunities there that you could tap into. Now, particularly because we're looking on this one, which is pensioners, meaning that there are persons who are aging, so you're looking to move away in terms of your risk appetite from equities. There are opportunities on the fixed income side. And I know earlier we'd have spoken about that, the opportunities are not necessarily there for persons who are smaller, and it may seem like smaller numbers, but we do have solutions here at Sagicor Investments, and I think our Sigma funds would provide you an opportunity as a pensioner to look at some fixed income opportunities with this additional disposable income. So you could look at a Sigma bond offering or some sort of diversified that gives you an option of a little bit of equity but still has some fixed income exposure, or some near-term type instruments in a money market type fund. So once again, once it is that you are coming into a little bit more in terms of your disposable income, I have to recommend that you don't spend all of it right now, but that you start to do the set aside and invest. And once again, talk to your Sagicor Investments wealth advisor. We have the answers for you.
So additional income will mean big investments. Some of the biggest investments that most people make in their lifetime is actually buying a home. Mr. Willis, on January 8th, the Prime Minister noted that they're targeting to do a minimum of 500 housing units under the new social investment program. Now, that's for this fiscal year. It's a welcome move, but what role can the financial industry play in improving home ownership of Jamaican nationals, particularly those with low incomes?
Let me first point out that persons under this program, the houses it's a gift from the government and the taxpayers of Jamaica. So they would be looking to us for mortgages. But notwithstanding, how we have helped this sector really is that we are the ones who fund a number of contractors, key contractors that put up these houses for the government. And the banking industry, not only Sagicor, has been doing a tremendous job. Mr. Siaga spoke about lack of laborers there is because of the sort of expansion. I have never seen so many houses going up in the history of Jamaica. It's revolutionary. But that is how we have helped indirectly. But we would not be funding this segment of homeowners. However, if you look at the broader cross-section of homeowners, like the ones that are more in keeping with commercial banking in terms of mortgages. If you notice, like at Sagicor, what we do to allow people to afford mortgages much better, irrespective of the higher interest rate, is that we have extended the tenure. Now someone can get a mortgage up to 40 years. That certainly transforms in a lower monthly payment, which helps them to acquire the home that they may like, even initially.
All right. Mr. Denning, the reverse income tax, we're talking about all the benefits that the taxpayers will be getting now. Reverse income tax credit of $20,000, an incentive for persons earning less than $3 million annually. They just need to file an online income tax filing by March 31. Could you explain and give details on the need to incentivize and the possible effects of this particular proposal?
So just stepping back for the moment from the specifics of the proposal and the importance of, I've mentioned earlier about the importance of tax compliance as a tool to generate further tax revenues. And it's critical as we continue to move forward. If we do not want to have budgets in later years where new taxes are imposed, we don't want to go back there. So tax compliance is critical, and incentivizing tax compliance is important. I thought it was useful to look at some numbers, if I could, because I think it's important. It might illuminate on the subject. In October 2023, Staten indicated that the employed, not the employable, but the employed workforce in Jamaica is 1.3 million people. In the budget, the minister referenced that there are, I think, about 641,000 on the PAYE roll, and he said some thousands on self-employed. I still haven't gotten that figure, but let's assume it's another 60,000. So let's say 700,000 people in total. That means that only 700,000 of 1.3 million of people who are working are actually paying any form of taxes. Now, you can explain some of that away by very informal employment arrangements in part, but I think we all would know a number of sectors that, you know, including what was mentioned earlier about the construction sector, where there are probably a lot of people working who are not paying any taxes and earning sometimes, in some cases, some very good levels of income. And so they're not contributing. So the only way that the country can reach persons who are not contributing that way is through the indirect tax system. So as I said, 700,000 in the system, maybe, as I said, a further 800,000 outside the system. Of that 700,000, about 475,000 now with the tax-free threshold of 1.7 million will be below, the estimate is that they will be below that threshold. So that only leaves you, if that's the case, with about 225,000 people who will be paying any income tax. So if you think about it, that's 17 out of 100 people who are employed in Jamaica paying any form of tax, paying any taxes. So that says to you that there's some significant amount of compliance effort needed. Now the tax administration in Jamaica has really progressed significantly over the years. I've been involved in tax for 20-something years here in Jamaica. They have made a lot of strides. But we know this in our society, it can be hard to get people into the tax net. But I think it's just interesting that perhaps maybe about 17 people out of every 100 people who are working are actually paying taxes. And another thing on top of that, when you look at the actual estimated tax take, that relatively small group of individuals, 225,000 who are paying income tax, are actually contributing more income tax to the consolidated fund than all of the corporates combined in Jamaica. That's an interesting number. You'll see it from the estimates. So I think that's quite a statistic. And you know, so while we're doing well, what that signals to me is that we have some way to go in terms of really getting everybody into the tax net and moving forward. So anything that incentivizes compliance would have to be welcomed. In my experience, however, I have found that when you're dealing with taxes, that it's usually a combination of carrot and stick that work better than either stick on its own or carrot on its own. And so when you look now to the specific measure that was announced, the 20,000 tax credit, reverse tax credit as it was called, that is, as I understand, to be given to persons who are both PAYE individuals and self-employed who are compliant for filing for 2023 and who I think who have filed by 31 March. I think that was how it was described. So the cost of that is 11.4 billion. I don't know if there's any administrative costs included in that, but if you just divide that by $20,000, you get 570,000 individuals. And the proposal is to set up a system that would have a direct funds transfer of that to, you know, potentially up to over 500,000 people. That's a lot of administration. But the bigger question is that $20,000 an incentive for compliance? Because if you're a PAYE worker, first of all, you don't file under the current system. You don't file a return. It's your employer is accounting for your payroll taxes. So the question is your employer accounting for you in the system? And if they're not accounting for you in the system, then the likelihood is they're seeking to evade tax on their employees generally. And then the likelihood is then that a $20,000 for you is not going to incentivize them to come forward and register and file and so on. So the question is, are you going to get the bang for your buck by giving that $20,000 in respect of the PAYE? And then second of all, for self-employed persons, they would have had to file their income tax return by March 15th. Now, some persons may decide to pay the penalty and pay it a month late if they miss the deadline. But generally speaking, I think it would be reasonable to assume that persons who are going to file the return anyway will file the return, and those who had no plans to file their returns as self-employed, who want to say stay outside the system, are not going to be incentivized to get into the system, which then causes them to pay taxes going forward for $20,000. In fact, if you're at if the 1.7 million threshold at that rate, $20,000, if you earn more than $1,780,000, then you'll end up paying more tax than the $20,000 credit that you would go and claim back. So you're not really going to be in a net win situation. So I think the credit as announced, I think it's more of seeking to do a give back to persons who are below 3 million. How it will play out in terms of will people come forward and register on the system is another thing. Administratively, it may have been easier to ask employers, legitimate employers, to actually pay it back through the payroll, and then you wouldn't have to set up a direct funds transfer for so many people. So I think there's a couple of questions around it. So I think, in principle, anything to incentivize compliance, I think, is a good thing. Whether this will incentivize compliance and cause people to become compliant who are not, I'm not sure. I have my concerns.
Thorough explanation there. We are going to a presentation by Jody and Aries in just a moment. Before I do that, Emily, I wanted you to speak a little bit on the unemployment insurance that was announced. Explain the proposed insurance scheme and what it means essentially.
It's a very good concept. What it is, it's partially income support. You lose a job. You have difficulty buying food, feeding the family. You can't buy food. It means the farmer down the road can't sell his produce. The corner shop can't sell either because you don't have any money, and it slows down the economy. So the intention, as I understand it, as announced, is you would give partial income support to the person who's lost the job. But what we don't know yet are all of the details about how it will work. What we're told by the minister, you have to register. And you register as being employed, having lost your job, and then, of course, in Jamaica, you'd need verification that you've actually lost your job. So not only does the employee represent that he or she has lost the job, but the employer has to also verify that a job is lost. I was thinking, I don't know if you walk off your job, I don't know if you would qualify for unemployment insurance, yeah? And then the other question is, how is it to be funded? It's a very crucial thing. I'm not so sure we've worked out the parameters yet. I know that there are different models that they play around with, one of which is to have people actually contribute to the scheme, a percentage of their income, and then government would put big injection to supplementing the other portion. We actually do have a loan that we're signing with World Bank for US $20 million. So we know government is going to top up a portion, but I don't know how is it that we're going to actually contribute to that. Right now we have sort of a panoply of taxes, NIS, NHT, education, and blah, blah, blah. So what they may do is literally have people contribute one-off taxes and then break out to the various taxes on the back end to include unemployment insurance scheme, but we don't know the details yet. Plus, there has to be a law governing it. And I think the legislative changes will have to come, plus the regulation. So I look forward to how it's going to work, but it's a very good policy, especially when one considers in COVID, so many people lost jobs, and the government was able to step in with support, irrespective of how minimal it was, and it allowed people a chance to just breathe financially for a little bit longer. Yeah, so good proposal. We need more details.
Right, so we are moving along nicely. We're in the final quarter of this very, very top of the table clash, as we'd probably say in football terms. I want to thank again everyone on social media for asking your questions, those of you here as well. And just to restate that if you didn't get a response to your question, you may call 888-Sagicor to speak with a Sagicor representative. We will be hearing in a short moment from Jody and Aries, but that will be on the other side of this break.
One-on-One is really a company that provides individualized learning for all. We were demanded to solve problems not only in schools but also companies and at a government level across the Caribbean. And so, we went to Sagicor and they were able to structure a deal through Sagicor Capital Markets, through Sagicor Investment, that allowed us the funding that was well needed.
One-on-One is a technology company that fuels education. Sagicor believes in this vision and therefore we invested in the company. Most recently, we led the company during their IPO process.
The IPO was an immense success. We raised close to about $3 billion, and certainly we're looking forward to even broadening this, and Sagicor Investments will take us there.
We invest every day in ourselves, our family and friends, investing our time and energy and our love. But at the end of the day, it's always worth it. That's how we'd like you to feel when you invest with us at Sagicor Investments. So we give you options like Sigma Global Funds, the largest and best performing in the industry, and stock brokerage with the lowest online trading fees. Because at the end of the day, we want you to feel like your investment was worth it. When you build wealth with Sagicor Investments, you never have to settle for less than your dreams. Call 888-Sagicor to speak with a wealth advisor so Sagicor Investments can help you create, grow, and preserve your wealth.
It's a buyer's market. That means there's potential to make money when the markets rise. That's why I'm investing in Sagicor Investments Sigma Global Funds now. Call me smart.
Let us help you find your ideal mix of investments today with Sigma Global Funds.
I have a mix of wise investments, so I keep earning no matter the season. I have a diversified portfolio with Sagicor Investments Sigma Global Funds. Call me savvy.
Let us help you find your ideal mix of investments today with Sigma Global Funds.
Raymond, it's your time. As promised, we have some stock picks. So as usual, I'll walk you through just a bit of what it is that we're expecting in terms of some companies that you can take a position in. So we'll start off with two companies that started out on the junior market and are effective tomorrow, transitioning or graduating to the main market. Lasco Distributors. It's a company that we have been watching as research analysts, and we are very optimistic about the future for Lasco Distributors. One of the things is that it has a low debt model, meaning that the company is not spending a lot of money to service any sort of debt, and that really translates to improvement in terms of its net profit. And once you talk about improvement in net profit and bottom line, then that is great for you as a shareholder of this company. They have been paying high dividends, and that is also something that's good. When we look at the PE for Lasco Distributors, it's trading just below 10 times, And this is good because when compared to those companies that are in similar distributive space, it is almost among the lowest of those companies. Moving over now to Lascaux Manufacturing, related company, what we find with Lascaux Manufacturing is that it has a similar model. It is low debt, high cash, which means that this is more money into the pockets of you, the shareholders. For Lascaux Manufacturing, we actually recommended this stock to our investors when it was trading around $3.50. And so if you are in it from that time, we're thinking that it could go a little bit higher than where it is now, which is $5 and around $5.55, thereabouts. And so we're still seeing further growth for a company like Lascaux Manufacturing. At the 9-month mark, its net profit was up around 25%, and we're expecting that this will continue to go forward. Similarly, dividend-paying stock. Moving further now on to Grace, a bigger size company, but still giving you exposure to manufacturing as well as the financial services space. And I'll point out that for Grace Kennedy, it's one of the companies that for most of 2023 we had on our watch list. And what the watch list means is that these are companies that we have assessed and we think they're trading at a fair price on the market. But we continually watch them. We don't just ignore them. And once it is that we did the revision, we saw the numbers, we realized that there's a dip in the price, and our expectation is that there could be some sort of upsides for you as investors. As a big company, what they really do to spur growth is that they do mergers and acquisitions. And Grace has a whole department that's geared towards finding good companies that are aligned with it that will propel growth for the company. I think at a recent investor briefing, the CFO mentioned that the acquisition of Unibev has actually been working well for them in terms of spurring their cash balance that they have. And similarly, trading at a good PE and is a dividend-paying stock. So you may realize a trend that we are recommending companies that are trading at fair variable PEs, they have stability, there's growth potential, and they're dividend-paying. So we're moving now to Massey, which is a large conglomerate. And one of the things that Massey took a step back and looked and decided, hey, we realize that we have a lot of exposure all over the place. So we're going to realign to our core operations. And so they divested some sections of the company, and that really prepares for them some amount of cash. And with that cash, we're expecting that they're going to now invest in other companies that are more aligned with the core operations. And this should spur further growth for this company. And for you, if it is that you choose to take some exposure to Massey. Similarly, low PE, 11 times, thereabouts, and it is a dividend-paying stock. Moving over to Westinco Group, which is similarly manufacturing space, it is another company that is on the low debt, high cash model, and as such, that's more money in the pockets for shareholders because they are not spending as much financing or servicing any sort of borrowings, and that augurs well for the bottom line. We are recommending Westinco. We know that in COVID, they would have expanded to exports, and that is showing some amount of scalability for the company, and we're still favorable on Westinco. And I'll round off our picks for today with Caribbean Cement Company. Now, this company, if you are in the stock market for a long time, you know they went through some challenges. It was a company that had some negative numbers, there was no dividend, and they have realigned, they have reduced that debt, and now they are a company that is giving dividends of, I think, about 25% payouts over the past 2 years. And we're looking at it, and they're planning to do expansion. There's also scalability as they plan to move into exports. So it's another good one that investors can look at. As usual, this is just a little bit of a touch of what it is that we have available at Sagicor Investments. There's more. For each of these companies listed here, there's a target price associated with them, and your Sagicor Investment Wealth Advisor has that information. So I urge you to reach out to your Sagicor Investments Wealth Advisor to ensure that you get all the details and all the good information.
In our fast-changing world, nothing stands still. You're either moving ahead or getting left behind. At Sagicor Investments, we integrate our expertise and industry experience to offer mid-size and large corporations the financing solutions they need to drive growth. Whatever your next move is, partner with the team with a solid track record of performance. the Sagicor Investments Capital Markets team. We have built a highly respected reputation for providing innovative corporate financing solutions for public organizations, private corporations, and SMEs. We originate, structure, and execute both public and private placements of tailored debt and equity financing that gives you the flexibility to retool, expand, or seize business opportunities. We have a wealth of experience in both debt and equity financing, raising over $130 billion within the last 5 years. Notably, Jamaica Public Service Bond of $180 million US, Jamaica Energy Partners Bond of $33 million US, and New Fortress Energy Bond of $222 million US. Large equity deals include 1&1 Educational Services Limited and EPLI Limited. Other capital market services include debt and equity financing, mergers and acquisitions, advisory services, company valuations, structured products, sale and leaseback, and underwriting. We are a full-service investment bank providing other services such as treasury and trading. We have the largest number of top-performing investment funds which have ranked in the top 3 year after year. Backed by the strength of Sagicor Group, one of the largest financial conglomerates in the region, you can be confident that we will deliver. Opportunities are on your business horizon. However, seizing the moment will require tailored financing solutions from a partner that understands the market and takes the time to appreciate the nuances of your business. Make your business move with Sagicor Investments Capital Markets.
Welcome back. We are now in the closing moments of our Money Talks series. This is the 5th staging of the Money Talks series with Sagicor. Just want to once again thank Jody and Aries for that very insightful presentation. All our persons on social media who are asking about which stocks to buy, hopefully they got some answers. And if you are interested in investing, you can call 888 Sagicor to speak with a wealth advisor. In the meantime, I want to say as well, the giveaway winners will be contacted. We want to congratulate all our winners on Zoom, Facebook, and Instagram, if you participated as well. And the person here, I think he knows by now whether he won or not. Let me just quickly give you the answer to our questions. Question 1 was for those joining on Zoom. What is the tagline for Sagicor Investments brand campaign? The answer, never settle for less than your dreams. I really do hope someone won. Question 2, for those people who were on Instagram, name 2 countries in which Sagicor Investments operates. The answer, Cayman Islands and Jamaica. Again, I think someone did win that. I think I saw the answer, so yes. Question 3, for people on Facebook, name 3 things needed to open a stock brokerage account with Sagicor Investments. It could be any of these 3: valid photo ID, TRN, proof of address, proof of income, or last 3 pay slips along with a completed JCSD mandate form. The first 3, easy to guess. Almost any business they're doing in Jamaica, you need proof of income, ID, TRN. So I'm pretty certain someone got that answer. We are just about at the end now, but I just have a bonus question throwing out to our panelists. They couldn't come and I just didn't throw something at them. Is there anything we believe that was not considered in this year's budget debate? Starting with you, Mr. Siaga.
The Minister of Finance spoke for over 4 hours, 4.5 hours to be exact. I don't think he could have spoken for any longer. There are many things that he could have added, and you're never going to please everybody. I think that we don't need a budget debate or a budget presentation to present everything that needs to be said and done. Yeah, there are things that weren't done. I don't think we need a budget to do it. The government is there to govern and put these things in place, whether there's a budget debate or not.
Emily, another one for you. How would you rate this year's budget debate?
It was off the chains. more ways than one. The sideshows were very interesting to watch. But the real issues, this year's budget, I think it was like the birth of ideas. Really good ideas, if properly implemented, it could really get us on. I just want to say something on a question that Professor Cohenberg asked, because I've been very concerned about this, and I know the minister said that the budget for pharmaceuticals and all sorts of drugs to treat the sick, that has gone up by over 124% over the last 3 years. So we're now budgeting over 19, nearly 20 billion to treat the sick. It means we're not taking care of ourselves well. We're not exercising. Some of us, the heaviest thing we lift is our plate. We have to do better than that. If your girt is getting a bit tight and you can't see your toe, you need to recalibrate. You need to start doing some better things. You need to manage your life. You need to sleep well. You need to eat well. You need to think well. You need to have some sort of higher being and do some sort of meditation, because it's serious. And we're getting to the age, if you are certainly at my age, where all sort of sickness come. Last thing I'd love to see is over the next budget cycle for the capital expenditure to maybe go up to about 100 billion, because it means more police stations, more schools, more hospitals, better roads, water supply and everything going out to our people. But we're on a good road to recovery. And I'm impressed that across the political spectrum, there is such maturity that it is highly unlikely that things can go wrong. So congrats to Sagicor Investments. I'm a proud investor, I think, with my little tuppence. Congrats for this forum, and happy birthday to you, Michael. All right, thank you.
I think that's just about all we have the time for today. We have gone over time by, yes, actually by about 20 minutes. It is my fault. I accept full responsibility, so you can throw everything at me once I come off the stage. But for everything good that happened throughout this discussion, for all the insights that you may have gained from our expert panelists, I'm just going to call them one by one, and I ask that you just give them a round of applause. Metro Siaga, the president of the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica. Emily Shields, attorney at law, journalist, talk show host. Host of the hotline. She's plugging as well, like Miss Ramsey earlier. Listen to her on Thursday on the hotline. Beside her, Mr. Denning, Brian Denning, who is a partner and CARICOM tax leader at Price Waterhouse Coopers. And beside him, you have the birthday, can I say birthday boy? He's a man. Birthday man, Michael Willesee, who is the Senior Vice President, Corporate SME Business Banking and Strategic Business Development. And lastly, but certainly not least, the lady that had the most important information for people who wanted to invest and buy stocks, Jodian Aries, Assistant Vice President of Research and Strategy, Sagicor Investments, Jamaica. Ladies and gentlemen, it has indeed been a very insightful evening of discussion. They were frank. The questions asked were useful. I hope you learned something. I certainly did. I want to quickly add as well, I'm a Sagicor investor proudly. Looking forward once more to our next Money Talks series, reviewing the budget debate and investment opportunities. Thanks once again and have an excellent evening. Take care.
When you're investing, consistency is key. That's why I am investing in Sagicor Investments, Sigma Global Funds now to get in while the markets are attractively priced. Call me Shrewd.
Let us help you find your ideal mix of investments today with Sigma Global Funds.